Joining us now from outside the courthouse in Virginia, MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, along with MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and former Assistant Attorney General who led the DOJ's criminal division, Leslie Caldwell. All right, so Lisa, you were inside that courtroom. Describe what you saw.
Katie, it was a totally packed courtroom today, and the best word I have for it is surreal. It was absolutely surreal to see James Comey, who once led the FBI, who was the Deputy Attorney General, who served as the Southern District of New York's U.S. Attorney, and perhaps most importantly for our purposes today, he was the U.S. Attorney in charge of the Richmond office of the office now prosecuting him, the Eastern District of Virginia. So to see him stand up in court today and say that he understood his constitutional and statutory rights to plead not guilty, and then listen as his lawyer previewed a series of defense motions that could get rid of this case before trial and negotiate with prosecutors things like when discovery is going to be produced, what it's going to look like, how they're going to get clearances to review classified information, and most importantly, when this case will be ready to go to trial, was just bizarre, particularly given where I was sitting in the courtroom. I had the Comey family 2 rows ahead of me with 3 of his daughters there, along with some of their spouses and his wife, Patrice. And at one point, his daughter, Maureen Comey, perhaps the best known of the Comey children, she was herself an assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, prosecuted the Ghislaine Maxwell and Sean Diddy Combs trials, but was fired in July for reasons not identified or articulated, perhaps for the crime of being James Comey's daughter. To see her comfort her mother, put her arm around her mom and rub it at the very end of today's proceedings, really, there just aren't words. It felt like living in the upside down to see Jim Comey go from being a leading figure in United States federal law enforcement to being a criminal defendant in a courthouse where he himself perhaps once stood and delivered arguments on behalf of the United States.
Yeah, extremely bizarre. But the president of the United States had said he wanted to see this happen, and it is now happening. Ken Dilanian, talk to me about who could be the government star witness.
Well, yeah, Katie, that's a great question, because what James Comey's lawyer said today is they don't really understand the case as it's been presented by the government. And that's in part because the indictment is very cryptic. It refers to person 1 and person 3. And essentially, it's accusing James Comey of authorizing person 3 to leak about an investigation involving person 1. And what we've learned through our reporting is that person 3 is a man named Dan Richmond, who's a longtime friend of Comey, a professor at NYU Law School. And when Comey was FBI director, Richmond worked for a time as a special government employee at the FBI, and he was dealing with reporters at that time. But we have learned also that he was interviewed in this case by prosecutors, and whatever he told prosecutors was not deemed helpful to the case, and he was never brought to testify before the grand jury. So if he's the star witness, he's not a very good star witness. Now, I should say, we don't know what documents they've obtained. They have something that led 14 grand jurors to vote to indict James Comey for lying to Congress on this question of whether he authorized a leak. But if Richmond is their witness, he's not going to be a great witness for them, as we understand.
Leslie, help me understand the process here. So the government went to a grand jury, presented evidence, and got an indictment. What sort of evidence might they present to get that indictment?
Well, they couldn't have presented much evidence because they only went into the grand jury on one day for a couple of hours, with the prosecutor handling the case being somebody who was very new to the case, new to the office, no criminal experience, could not possibly have taken the time to go through whatever documents there might be, because she was only in the job for a couple of days before the indictment. So that is very different from the normal process, which is in a complicated or significant case. Witnesses will be called to testify before the grand jury. It doesn't appear that there were any witnesses who testified except perhaps an agent who would be summarizing the evidence.
And you know this because you used to run the division. I mean, in order to get a former FBI director indicted, what would normally be the process, especially with somebody as high profile as that?
So that would be an extraordinary case to bring under any circumstances. The normal process would be whatever the person was being investigated for, and there has been at least one investigation of a former FBI director in the past. It would be the evidence would be gathered, subpoenas would be issued, documents would be reviewed, people would be interviewed. Some of those people probably will testify before the grand jury, and it'll be very seriously considered, probably at a level above the U.S. Attorney's Office, not the president, though, maybe the Attorney General, whether there's sufficient evidence to bring a case. Because that would be an extremely significant case under any circumstances.
So, Leslie, again, and I want to emphasize that this was your division. You would understand how these sorts of criminal prosecutions would be brought. I mean, you're the real expert here on it. Does it sound like, from what you've gathered so far, that the government has a strong case? And contrarily, what sort of case does it look like James Comey has?
So I think the government does not have a strong case. In fact, it was extraordinary that there was an indictment, given that the prosecutors who were actually investigating the case wrote a declination memo, meaning we'd recommend that you don't bring this case. That for the case to be indicted, particularly by a novice prosecutor who doesn't know anything about the facts, when the line prosecutors, the career prosecutors who have been handling the case all along, declined prosecution. Also, the case had been declined in the past, as there not being sufficient evidence. So I think that Jim Comey probably has a very good case. Whether he'll succeed in getting the case dismissed before trial is a little less clear. Vindictive prosecution motions are hard to make, and they're rarely granted, although one was recently granted, or at least given effect in the Abrego Garcia case.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in this case, though, you have the President of the United States saying publicly that he wants James Comey charged. I mean, we can put it up on the screen. I mean, he said so vocally as well a number of times over the years. But just days before he was charged, he put out a post on Truth Social directing, it seems, his Attorney General to get it done. Here it is. The person who was in charge of this office, Eric Seibert, resigned, we believe, because he was not going to bring these charges. Lindsay Halligan, who you've referenced a couple times, now leads that office. She has no prosecutorial experience whatsoever. If you are a judge overseeing this, and you let me know if you know this judge, Nachmanoff down there, would you look more closely at the vindictive charge here because of the circumstances surrounding it?
absolutely. And I think, I don't know the judge, but I think that will happen. I mean, there's generally something called the presumption of regularity, which means the prosecutors are not motivated by vindictive means or incentives. I think that the government has forfeited that presumption of regularity in this case because of all the sequence of events leading up to the actual indictment. The president is ordering an indictment. The U.S. attorney is refusing to indict and resigning or being fired. There's a declination memo on file. The grand jury is evidence is thrown into the grand jury of whatever kind. It couldn't have been very complicated. And the case is indicted a few days before the statute of limitations is about to expire. So I think there's a lot, particularly given all the things that the president has said for years, but particularly, as you said, when he posted on Truth Social. I think that this is probably the strongest fact pattern for a successful vindictive prosecution motion that I've seen.
What must it be like in that office right now? Can you tell?
I don't know, but I'm sure if it's like any other U.S. attorney's office I've worked in or at DOJ, the morale is very low. I mean, there's a U.S. attorney who doesn't know what she's doing. She's been imposed on the office. The U.S. attorney who had been nominated by President Trump is now gone. People have been fired. Apparently, the people in the office were not willing to present the case to the grand jury or try the case. So there are now two prosecutors from a different district who have been parachuted in to do that. It's got to be an awful feeling, because one of the reasons people sign up to work at DOJ and the U.S. Attorney's offices, and these are mostly people who could be making a lot of money in private practice if that's the path they wanted to go down, it's because they want to do public service and they want to do a job that's important for everyone, enforce the law in a fair and honest way without fear or favor, as they say in the oath that AUSAs take. So I think it's got to be terrible, and I'm sure people are probably thinking of leaving if they don't already have their resumes out.
Ken just mentioned, as you a moment ago, that Comey's legal team is still waiting for a lot of information from the government about what exactly is in this case, the discovery. Is it normal to not have discovery at one of these hearings?
There's not necessarily discovery handed over at the initial appearance, but it comes fairly quickly after that. And I think that the reason why there's not discovery is probably because nobody's actually looked at the evidence. Nobody's on the current team has actually looked at the evidence and knows what there is to produce in discovery.
It seems like maybe they're bringing the case because the president wanted it brought, and then whatever happens after that, not their fault.
Right. And the statute of limitations was about to expire, so they didn't really have time to get their act together.
Yeah.